Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald show about that soccer club from South Florida that is no longer in the playoffs. Shockingly, got eliminated in round one. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, here with our Inter Miami beat writer, Michelle Kaufman. As always, as you can probably tell, if you look at what we're wearing, this is a very solemn episode because shockingly, it's over. The season came to an end last Saturday night. Game 3, decisive Game 3, went to Atlanta 3-2. And we're going to go over it. We're just going to talk about what this means for Inter Miami in the short term, the long-term impact it's having on them, the league, you name it. But again, a shocking result. We honestly, we talked about it. We said it could happen, but it's still kind of surreal to think that this team is out so soon in the playoffs. Even Drake Callender, just take a look at what he had to say after the game.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was a difficult game for us. I mean, playing in a game where it's win or go home, of course, both sides are going to bring everything that they have. We had our chances, could have been a lot better. Defensively, I think I should have been a lot better. I think, our collective effort could have been better, and that was the result. So it's a hard one to take, and, now it's, that's the reality. That's, pro sports. You have to live with it. We're all grown men, and, that was just how the game happened.
Yeah, it was a really depressing mood, as you might imagine, after that game. It was very quiet. Meanwhile, in the Atlanta locker room, you could hear them all the way down the hall. I mean, they pulled off with no big stars other than Brad Guzan, who we'll talk about him later. That's a really big star in this series. But he was not supposed to be the star of this series. This team has Messi. This team has Luis Suarez. This team has Jordi Alba. Sergio Busquets for part of it. We're going to discuss him too, his absence and what that meant. But, this was not supposed to happen this way. No one would have predicted that Inter Miami was going to lose in the first round, although we have been saying all season that they are defensively vulnerable, that they do score a lot of goals, but because of the style, the way they play, they leave themselves open to counterattacks, and that's exactly what Atlanta took advantage of. But it was a very, very quiet, sad mood. Afterward, let's hear from Drake about what the locker room was like.
To be honest, the locker room was pretty solemn, pretty quiet. I think guys are kind of dealing with this in their own way. I think it's just, you have to live with it. Like, we had the game at our home. We had the advantage. We had our home crowd. Had our squad ready to go. And, we were a goal short tonight.
They came up very short. So let's break it down. What happened? The beginning of the game seemed okay. Matias Rojas scores kind of early, 17th minute. Things are looking good. They dominated. By the way, this team completely dominated the game. Dominated possession like 65% to 35%. Had far more, 25 shots and, 10 shots on goal. I mean, had so many opportunities, more than Atlanta. Had many more opportunities than Atlanta. Atlanta took 4 shots on goal and scored 2. Miami had 10 shots on goal. I mean, they scored 3. Miami had 10 shots on goal, scored 2. The team just fell short defensively. And we discussed before that when Luis Suarez and Leo Messi are playing together, you are giving up a little bit defensively. And so you have to be very strong in back. And the absence of Yannick Bright and Sergio Busquets is much bigger than I think people thought, and maybe even bigger than the team itself thought, and Tata, because without those two in back who play in the middle, the first 2 goals that Atlanta scored was like an open lane in the middle of the field. It was like there used to be a barricade, and all of a sudden the barricade was lifted, and there's an open lane. The right lane had a defender. The left lane had a defender. The middle was open. the middle was open, and the middle is usually where Yannick Bright is, and right behind him is Sergio Busquets, one of the best ever at that position. And so without those two, there was too much space. And so Tata has received some criticism, or second guessing anyway, about why he chose in this game to go 4 and back and have an extra attacker. The reason that he gives, which we're going to hear from him in a minute here, the reason he gives is that, look, they wanted to win this game. They wanted to put their foot on the accelerator from the beginning and score goals. And they have so many players who can score goals on this team. So he put an extra attacker in there. He had Kramaski in there. He had Matias Rojas in there, Diego Gomez, Messi, Suarez. That's 5 attackers.
And it worked. And it worked for a moment, because Matias Rojas strikes 17th minute, 1-0. And even this person right here turned away. I admit, I turned away for a second, and I come back, and suddenly I look and it's 2-1, and I'm like, what the, you know what? Yeah. And I had to rewind. I literally had to rewind the broadcast and go, what the just happened? And then I saw what happened.
Yeah, you saw what happened. And what happened is there were open spaces in the middle of the field where people were not being defended. And, you know, give it up to Atlanta. They took advantage. They saw the opening. They took advantage. And then on the other end, of course, Brad Guzan, again, star of this series. He had 8 saves in game 1, 7 saves in game 3. He played just a monstrous game. Everybody was praising him afterward about what an incredible player he was. But I want to hear from Tata here about why did he play 4 and back instead of 5, and did he maybe second guess that decision? Here's what he said.
Si puedes evaluar esta noche, la temporada y la jugada del tercer gol de ellos, si tú crees que eso era clave, lo que pasó en ese gol, si puedes explicar eso, gracias.
En el partido, en rasgos generales, creo que sería otra vez hablar de merecimiento. Me parece que nosotros justificábamos a lo largo del partido haberlo podido ganar. Inclusive con las corridas que tuvo Atlanta, nosotros hicimos una importante cantidad de situaciones de gol, terminamos jugando muy cerca del arco del área de Atlanta, y esto pasó en muchas situaciones del partido, ni hablar a lo último. Después, antes de la actuación del árbitro, había otra pregunta.
De la temporada.
La temporada.
¿Es un éxito o no es un éxito?
No, éxito cuando uno queda eliminado acá en cuartos de final, no. Ha tenido cosas buenas, ha tenido cosas malas. Si uno piensa dónde estábamos en noviembre del año pasado, evidentemente hay un progreso en lo que se refiere al club, no solamente al equipo. Si uno piensa en las expectativas que teníamos para este playoff, evidentemente nos hemos quedado demasiado cortos.
All right, here he's speaking in general first here about, I asked him to sort of evaluate the game, evaluate the season, and can this season be considered a success? They won the Supporters' Shield, whatever. He said no. First of all, at the ending of the quote there, he said, no, it's not a success. When you have he said, there were good things and there were bad things. When you look back at where we were last November, yes, we've made great progress, and that's good. But when you consider the expectations that we had for the playoffs, we fell very short. So, his evaluation was that, yes, they did some good, some bad. It's definitely not a success. They fell very short in the playoffs. As far as the game goes, he feels like they had a lot of opportunities to score. He felt like they did a lot of good things. They had a lot of opportunities to score. But again, they fell short. And now about the decision to start 4 men in back instead of 5 and go with a more attacking system. Let's see what he had to say about that.
en estos últimos partidos con 3 centrales y 2 carrileros? Gracias.
Y sobre todo que lo primero es que veíamos cada vez mejor a Matías en los entrenamientos. Entonces nos daba la impresión de que valía la pena modificar el esquema, correr algún cierto riesgo de que nos vayan al espacio, pero poner un jugador más de ataque y sobre todo un jugador más que juegue en el entrelínea, no tanto de profundidad, pero sí del entrelínea. Y obviamente corrimos los riesgos, pero además en los entrenamientos semanales habíamos quedado bastante conformes con lo que habíamos visto. Y el día viernes inclusive tuvimos una charla bastante prolongada en la sala de videos para mostrar justamente lo que habíamos hecho mal o bien en el entrenamiento del día anterior. Y la verdad que nos parecía que era un buen momento para jugar con la línea de 4 y agregar un jugador más de mitad de cancha hacia adelante.
So he basically admits here that, they decided to take a risk and they felt it was worth it before the game, obviously not after. But he said, Matias Rojas had looked very, very good in training. And this is the parts that we don't see. This is the part that the critics don't see and we don't see. He's there. These coaches are there at practice every day. He said Matias Rojas looked very, very good in training in the recent days. And they thought it was, yes, they knew that there would be a risk involved with putting another attacker because it was going to maybe open up some space. But they thought it was worth it because of the way he was playing. And he said further in the press conference later that they wanted to score. They wanted to take control of the game early and put Atlanta on its heels. And so they thought by having all of these attackers in there with Rojas looking so good in training that it was worth taking the risk of leaving some space open. So now in hindsight, what do you say, Andre? What do you think? It's
in the 17th minute, it looked brilliant. I mean, look what happened. He scored. They got their 1-0 lead. They looked like they were going to add on. And then all of a sudden, a blink of an eye, it just back to back. And then you're thinking, Messi ties it. And the second that happens, you're thinking, okay, here comes the avalanche of goals. Probably going to see.
Here comes the storybook ending. Messi scored.
Maybe
he
it's
got
another
all
hat trick.
Excited. Yeah.
Maybe it's another hat trick. This is going to end 5-2, 6-2, a party, And no, again, they again on the backside, a letdown, and it leads to another score. And 76th minute on, they're playing catch up again, and couldn't catch up.
Yeah, and you look at Atlanta. I mean, yes, they played great in this series. Brad Guzan was unbelievable, but this is a team that, on paper and through the season, this was a team that struggled all season. This is a team. Miami scored 70-something goals, 79 goals, whatever, and they scored like 40-something goals. They were not the team that Miami was. Miami had so much success all season, so much success. Only 4 losses the entire season, 4 losses. And the thing is now, a lot of people are saying, oh, this team, they were relying too much on their stars. They're this, they're that, Tata, whatever. A lot of finger pointing going on. But when you look at 34-game season, they had 4 losses total the whole season. They scored more points, had the best record in MLS history. No team in MLS history, 29 years, has done as well as this team did over the span of 34 games. So they were doing something right. Tata's plans were working. The lineups that they had were working with Messi and without Messi for a long time, because Messi was not with this team for 2.5 months, and they were still winning during that period. So all of a sudden, for them to crash out, a team that good and that superior, the highest payroll, $42 million payroll, Messi makes more than the entire Atlanta roster. Messi alone makes more than the entire Atlanta roster. So for a team that superior to be gone in the first round, it is the biggest upset in MLS history. No team with that big of a gap in points has ever beaten another team with that big of an advantage in a first round. For them to be out, and you look at, Columbus Crew is out too, by the way, and Cincinnati. The three teams that we've been talking about all season from the East, we were saying, Inter Miami, they're going to have to get through.
Right.
Cincinnati was the Supporter Shield winner last year. Columbus Crew is the defending champion. They're out. And Inter Miami, the Supporter Shield MLS all-time record team, is also out. Yep. All three of those teams are out in the first round, which brings us to the next question that Jordi Alba has been harping and saying. He says that the American playoff system, that the MLS playoff system is not really a just, fair way to determine a season champion. That he thinks they should have taken the top team in the East, which was Miami, and the top team in the West, which I believe was the Galaxy or LAFC, which finished with the top points, and have them play each other, and that should be the champion. The top team of the whole season of 34 games of the East versus the best record of the West, have them play each other, and that should be the champion. Because in other leagues in Europe, they don't have the two league, they all play each other. So there's one league, whoever finishes at the top of the table is the winner. There are two tables. Here there are two tables going on simultaneously. So he's saying take top of the table of the East, take top table of the West, have them play each other. What do you think?
And do it in a 2 out of 3 to make it fair. So it's not one fluky night, one team has a bad night and they're done. I already told you how I feel about this weird having the first round be the 2 out of 3. To me, the last round should be the 2 out of 3. You're playing for a championship. You could have one off night. You win twice within 2 weeks or within 3 weeks, you're the better team. But I
think they did it? You know why I think they did it? They'll never say it. Because I think this thing started last year. I think they didn't want a situation where Lionel Messi's team, the team that they really want in the playoffs all the way through, have one bad game in the first round and is out for the entire play. They didn't want they didn't want the best team. I'm not going to say it was just done for Messi because it may have been the year before that they started this. They didn't want the team that is the prohibitive favorite, which in this case was Messi. Maybe last year would have been Columbus or Cincinnati. They didn't want a team that was the greatest team all season to have one fluky game. Right. Or, one player gets sick or a weather situation or something that would make it that the best team all season would lose in a one-game, one-off, which happens in the NCAA basketball tournament.
Of course.
You can be the number one ranked team in the entire country and lose to the 16th seed, and you're out, and you're out.
Well, it happens in the NFL too. In the NFL, it's one and done every round. It happens in, now it's going to happen in college football with the new 12-team playoff. I mean,
you
it's
can be the best all season in the United States with playoffs. Right. This is how we do it. This is how we do it here. We have playoffs, and you can have the best record all season. But they don't crown the NFL team with the best record is not crowned the NFL champion. And the Major League Baseball team with the best record of the season is not crowned the Major League Baseball champion. True. They have a World Series.
Right. But, that's what I was going to say. At least in those sports where the physical grind allows you to play, if not every day, maybe once every 2 days, something like that, you have series. And that's the difference. The only thing that comes close is Champions League, where each round you're playing the 2-game format, aggregate scoring, see who goes forward. That's the only thing I can think of that they do. But I understand, MLS probably doesn't want the playoffs to last all the way into December or late December, January, whatever, because then the season's starting a month later. But if you want to be fair, then you know what? Make it 2 out of 3 each round, or shrink the playoffs.
Shrink the playoffs, maybe fewer teams.
Fewer teams.
Now, in this case, Atlanta wouldn't even have been in. Atlanta would not have even been in these playoffs because they let 9 teams are above the line at the end of the season. And then the 8 and 9 play each other in the play-in wild card game. But why not just have the top
take the top
six
four.
or the top
Take,
four?
Take the top four.
Just have the top four.
Right. Take the top four and then have 5 and 6 instead of 8 and 9 be the play-in game. You do that one,
right.
one and done. That one's sorry, but if you're the
One
fifth or
and
sixth
done.
team, too bad. You didn't earn the chance to be in a series. You have a one shot. You take it, or you're screwed. And then those top four in each conference get to play 2 out of 3 each until you get to the champion.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I know it sounds like sour grapes, and a lot of people are saying,
but you know why they won't do that?
Oh, sour grapes.
You know why they won't do that though? Because then you're eliminating markets that'll be interested until the end of the season in what's going on, because they're not going to want to eliminate the would have been 7 through 9 that are still going to care and still going to watch Apple TV and care about their team and all that. It's the same reason baseball watered it down and added a bunch of teams to their playoffs. They want more teams to be, they want the teams that are 5 under 500 still paying attention. So
money. It's about money. Let's admit, professional sports, it's about money. It's about more games on TV, which is more revenue. And that's what they want. More people in the stands, more watching on TV. But in this case, people are saying Jordi Alba, sour grapes, you're complaining. He said, he's prefaced it by saying, all credit to Atlanta. They played us really well. Their goalkeeper was absolutely spectacular. He said he really was the determining factor in this series. And that is true. The way he played in the first game and the third. And if you look at the numbers, Inter Miami dominated game 3, dominated completely, and game 1, dominated possession. We're talking about 65% to 35% of the time they had the ball. They took way more shots on goal. And yet, Atlanta's alive, and Miami's out, and Columbus is out, and Cincinnati's out. The LA teams out there are still in.
But in the East, and Atlanta facing Orlando. Orlando's celebrating on the same night too.
Orlando's celebrating.
That was a moment for a lot of Miami fans.
That the league. Again, this is no offense to Atlanta. Atlanta is a great underdog story. It's a wonderful underdog story, and for people who like underdog stories, they're going to root for Atlanta now. But for the casual fan, the interest in the MLS playoffs plummets without this team. It plummets without Lionel Messi.
I've got another one for you that's single elimination when it gets down to it. The World Cup.
Right.
Among many other international tournaments that get down to a knockout stage. And hey, guess what? One and done. Sorry.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, it happens. And you have to look. This team should not have lost 2 out of 3 to Atlanta.
No, right.
This team, I'm going to give you, get ready for this stat. There are only 3 games this season, all year, including playoffs. There are only 3 games that Miami lost with Lionel Messi playing 90 minutes. All 3 were to Atlanta. All 3 of those games were to Atlanta, a team that finished in 9th place. It was not the Columbus Crew.
And had to win in PKs just to get into the darn series.
They were 9th place. 9th place. They had to go to the play-in game. The play-in game went to PKs. They were on the road. Okay. They had to fly from Atlanta to Montreal. Their game went to penalty kicks. 3 days later, they had to be in Miami because that game was on a Tuesday, and MLS decided to have the Inter Miami kick off the playoffs in a standalone game on Friday night. All the other games were starting Saturday. They had the Inter Miami game starting Friday to give them, again, another advantage Miami had. Let's be honest. Atlanta, the 9th place team, had to fly to Montreal, play all the way, then have penalty kicks, fly back 3 days later, Friday night, play in Miami, okay? And they lost that game, but only by 1 goal. Then they go home and they win that game in front of 68,000 people. And then they come back here, and Miami played. The big deal about the supporter shield was that they were going to have home field advantage for the entire playoffs. And what a great advantage that's going to be. Well, guess what? They lost at home. They lost at home to Atlanta. So Atlanta, hats off to Atlanta United. They did an incredible job against Miami. But the fact that these playoffs are going on without the highest paid team, the team with the most stars, the most exciting team to watch the way they play, it's shocking. It's shocking. And I am sure that, the league won't say it, Apple won't, they're not going to say it, but the interest in the playoffs just diminishes when you don't have Lionel Messi and his team in these playoffs. It's devastating for the league and for everyone associated.
Well, now on behalf of all those Apple executives and all of and Inter Miami itself, and now the question is, where do we go from here? What's next for this team?
Well, that's a big question. I have a feeling, I think Chris Henderson may be headed to Atlanta. There are rumors. Garth Lagerwey, who, by the way, used to play for the Miami Fusion, as did Chris Henderson. Garth Lagerwey was a goalkeeper way back when, in the olden days when I used to cover Miami Fusion. He was a long time with the Seattle Sounders as the president, GM over there. He was a president, worked with Chris Henderson. They worked together and won many, many games and titles with Seattle. Garth is now in Atlanta. Garth is in Atlanta. And from what I'm hearing, and I spoke to Garth when I was in Atlanta, he wouldn't say anything, but just the look on his face when I said the word, is Chris Henderson coming to Atlanta? He made a face. I would not be surprised if Chris Henderson may be gone. We'll see. I think, my opinion, Inter Miami should do everything they can to keep him, because the players that he put together, not the stars. He's not the guy who was in charge of bringing Lionel Messi and Lionel Messi's friends, but he's the guy who found Yannick Bright. He's the guy who found Yannick Bright. Noah Allen, Ian Frey, these guys came
Those
up.
Those are the harder discoveries. Yep.
These are the harder discoveries. Scouting. And the scouts did an excellent job under Chris Henderson. And also, Chris Henderson, the reason they hired him in the first place is that he understands the very complex salary structure of MLS. He knows the ins and the outs and how to do the GAM and the TAM, the allocated money and the this money and that money. And he knows how to do all of that stuff and do all these equations.
Makes me think it might come in handy if, this certain name out there, Neymar makes me come in handy to figure out those financials to make it happen.
The financials are really hard. So Chris Henderson is a guy who's behind the scenes. He doesn't like to do that many interviews. He's not in the forefront, but he's like an accountant in the back office crunching numbers. He's a great scout of talent. And he also is a very good accountant and figures out to put all the puzzle pieces together that you have to do in this league. So, number one, the future of Chris Henderson is in doubt. I don't know what the situation is. I'm going to be looking into that. So, we're going to see what happens with that. Luis Suarez wants to stay. He has said as much. He said, if it were up to me, I would stay. He's in negotiations with the team right now. His attorneys and his agent, his representatives are talking to the team. So he wants to come back. The guy scored 21 goals. He was the leading scorer on this team, on a team that had Messi on it, which is incredible. And he held this team together when Messi was gone. So I would think that they would want him to come back, and they're going to try to find a way to do that. I don't know. Jordi Alba was making $1.5 million. That's very low for him. I would think that next season he would have to make more. So again, there's a lot of financials that are going to have to happen. Leo Campana, that's a guy that a lot of teams would like to have. He stayed here because he wanted to be here and would do whatever he had to do. But let's face it, if you're him and you can start somewhere else, at this point, does he stay or would he want to go somewhere else? Diego Gomez will be gone. He's going to Brighton in the EPL. He's leaving for England in January, so he'll be gone. I think honestly, the core of the team, I think, will be the same. I don't see why you would change. The team that had the best record in MLS, they should come back and be an outstanding team. You know, they really did just lose this series to Atlanta. I don't think people need to overreact and say, oh, the team needs to be blown up, or Tata needs to be fired, or Chris Henderson needs to be fired. No, they did an amazing job, right? I mean, do you agree? What do you think?
Yeah, no, they definitely did. I mean, it's very hard, as we know, to not have knee-jerk reactions when it's something on this epic of a scale, when there's so high expectations. But you're right. This is a small window of what we're dealing with right now. But think about what we talked about before, the bad matchup. This is the team that kind of owned them during the season, all of that stuff. Yeah, you have to take a step back, take a breath, and look at it and go, okay, where did we go wrong? But that doesn't mean overall it was the wrong formula. It's just tweaks. Like, where did we screw up? What did we do?
I think central defense. I think
defense
center
needs
back
is a huge position to address.
I think right there they need to invest. You know, this is again David Martinez. You know, whatever Sergei Kristoff. This is who you know. I think it was very clear all season, not just in this series. The combination of the holes in the center backs, in the central defense, weakness, coupled with Brad Guzan playing out of his mind, that combination led to Atlanta beating them in this series, okay? Because Miami does have a lot of players who can score. Scoring is not a problem.
It's not an issue at all. Even in that game, the last game at least, you know.
Right, they scored two.
Yeah.
They scored two.
Right.
So, you know, if you score 2 goals, that's pretty good. They averaged more goals than anyone. They scored 79 goals this season.
Yeah, you score twice, you should at least have a fighting chance in any game.
Right.
I mean,
so
that's a start.
Scoring, absolutely. Scoring is not the option, is not the problem with this team. The problem with this team all season was in back, and particularly in the center of the back and the center of the midfield back, in the middle of the field, not on the wings.
While you were talking, I looked it up. There were 8 teams in the MLS. Now, it doesn't sound like a ton, but 8 teams that gave up fewer goals, and there were several others. So if you look at it, double-digit amount of teams that either gave up the same amount of goals or fewer goals than they did this season. Not quite the mark of the top team overall when it comes to that side of the ball.
Right. And the thing is, Tata, one of the reasons Tata's teams are fun to watch is that he loves offense. Okay. He was an attacking player. He loves attacking players.
He likes that style, right?
And fans love it. Let's face it. Fans are complaining now. Fans love goals. Okay. Fans love goals. And so, but all season, everyone on the team, including Drake Callender, a couple interviews I had with him earlier, everyone said the way we play is very exciting, but it is high risk. It's a high risk way to play. You know, if you play a defensive style, it's just not as fun. It's not as exciting, and you're not going to score as many goals, but you are probably going to prevent more goals. He's taking a gamble every time. They're taking a bit of a gamble by being an attacking team, but you can withstand that if you've got really good people playing center back and playing in the center of your midfield in the back, defensive holding midfielders. I think they have 2 great ones with Busquets, and then with Yannick Bright, the new rising player in that position under the tutelage of Sergio Busquets, the best ever probably at that position. That's a very strong position, holding defensive midfielder. And the weakness is just they were both out. They were both out. Right. Outer limit in these last 2 games. Meanwhile, and you know, in the previous game, Busquets didn't play at all, and Yannick Bright went out for the whole second half in Atlanta. Yeah. He played the first half.
They literally
played the first half. Yannick Bright played the first half at Atlanta, went out, and everything fell apart. This game, they didn't have Yannick Bright at all, and Busquets didn't come in until the very end. That surprised me.
They literally sprung a leak in the worst spot on the boat that you could spring a leak, basically,
exactly.
Metaphorically speaking.
They sprung a leak in the middle central holding midfield, and then their center backs are not strong enough. I don't think that's where I think they need to really focus their attention. They don't need to. I know everyone's excited about Neymar. That would be great. We talked about, okay, he's 32,
down the road.
Be the face of the future. But what they need right
That's when
away.
Messi hangs it up. That's when Messi hangs it up.
Yeah,
bring in your replacement superstar.
Replacement superstar is Neymar. Need right now is central defense. A rock. They need a rock in back, one or two, because if someone gets hurt,
you need depth.
They need a couple of really strong players in the back.
That's what it comes down to. You need depth at that position, because look what happened. The second you lost 1 or 1.5, I guess you could say, it all went to hell. So they need to bolster the depth at that position for sure.
Yeah, and I think, I was surprised when they said Busquets was going to be cleared to play. I just assumed he would start. When they said he's going to play, I thought, oh, well, if Busquets can play, then he'll start. Right. No, he didn't start, and he didn't come in until almost very late in the game. So he clearly must have not, he had not practiced for 2 weeks. He had some sort of internal injury. So he was not able to really contribute very much, and Yannick Bright was not able to contribute at all. So, yeah, going forward, what's next? I don't think they need a complete overhaul by any stretch. I think Tata's a great coach still, and I don't think, maybe he's second-guessing the starting 4 and back. Maybe he is second-guessing that today. I know a lot of people are. That doesn't mean he's not a good coach. He led this team to the best record in the history of this league, and did so with Messi missing 2.5 months, and with other players going away for national team duty, also having to withstand a very long season, starting with a worldwide tour, 5 different countries, flying to China, flying to the Middle East. These are things other teams didn't have to do. And I think Tata did a very good job of managing everything he had to manage. So I think he did a good job. The team overall did a great job. I think they ran into an Atlanta team that had a good game plan. They sprung a leak, as you said, a great way to word it. The boat sprung a leak, and now the playoffs goes on without them. And by the way, I think there's going to be there's going to be a lot more preseason games. Again, I'm hearing about a game maybe at Maracanã in Brazil. I have a feeling this team again is going to be traipsing around the world in the preseason. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Why wouldn't you?
What do you think?
Why wouldn't you? I mean, to parade. I mean, I get it. In the monetary sense, we go back to it's all money. Of course, you're going to highlight this team as long as you can while number 10 is in that lineup. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you got to market the hell out of it. But we're going to be talking about it a few months from now, about all the potential hiccups and constraints and challenges that it means for this team. That doesn't mean they're not going to do it, because there's too much there's too many there's too much money involved, too many monetary interests involved. This team is the bright jewel right now of this league, and they're going to push it as far as they can.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of that, how about the Club World Cup? We discussed.
I mean, I know it's still next summer, but I wasn't sure.
No, but I'm saying they gave the spot. They gave the spot to Inter Miami. Now
there's another example.
We're basically, not only is the MLS Cup champion not going to play in the Club World Cup, it's going to be a team that lost in the first round of the playoffs is going to be the representative of MLS in the Club World Cup, which says everything that you need to know. The representative of MLS in the Club World Cup next summer, which is supposed to be the best teams of all the leagues around the world, Inter Miami is playing in the opening game at Hard Rock Stadium.
On paper, they'll say it's the best team. On paper, it might still be the best team.
The best team of MLS is playing in the Club World Cup. But they lost in the first round.
I know.
They lost in the first round.
They can't. Well, and they can get away with now saying at least we didn't screw the Columbus Crew over. They lost too. But you're not going to have whoever it ends up being, the Galaxy or maybe New York City FC, if they surprise everybody. I don't know. Whoever it ends up being won't be there. So that's the point. But
it's all about Messi. It's all about Messi. It's all about number 10 and the league, Apple, all the sponsors. They want this team to be showcased.
Yep.
They want this team to be showcased, and that's why,
Look,
they're wearing black. I'm sure they're probably wearing black this week.
Oh yeah. They were shorthanded. They decided, like thousands of coaches have since the dawn of time, like they've decided, we're gonna play to our strength, even if it's a huge gamble. We live by the sword, we die by the sword. This is the way we play, and that's what they did.
That's what he said. He did say a few different ways and times in the last few days. One of the things that Tata kept saying is, we have played the same way all season.
Yeah.
We're not changing now for one opponent. Right. This is how we play. This is what we do. We score goals. We have all these guys who can score goals. We know they can. We see them in practice. They've done it all season. We've scored more goals than any team. We've made scored more points than any team in the history. We're not going to all of a sudden become a defensive team. We're going to be an offensive team, an attacking team. Like you said, live by it, die by it.
Yeah.
They died by it.
Yep.
They died by it this time. But I do wonder, and we'll never know, if Busquets and Yannick Bright were in the lineup for these two last games, would they have lost these two games?
Right.
Even with Brad Guzan and everything, would they have lost these two games? I think no.
And that is going to be the question. And then the hard part is going to be the wait and obviously the journey back. But if a year from now this team is doing what they hope to do and they're winning the MLS Cup, they'll look back on it and just say it was a learning experience. But of course, that entire year between now and then is going to be the hard part for everybody, from the team, the league, the fans, everybody, to be patient enough to see if they can regroup.
And I don't think people will be that excited next year if they were to win Supporter Shield. I don't know that there's going to be such big celebrations and fireworks and all that, because it's going to be like, you know what? Okay, you won the Supporter Shield, but it didn't, it didn't translate.
Right, big whoop.
Yep. Big whoop. You won the Supporter Shield. No one knows years later who won the Supporter Shield. Nobody there, no one's talking about that.
Yeah. If they happen to, great. If not, who cares? And not just them. Look at all the other teams. Look at all the other teams that are sitting home right now that are thinking that we're in the fight to be that top team.
It is shocking. I mean, to be honest, you know what else is going to look interesting? Coach of the Year is going to be announced sometime next week. And the two leading candidates were Wilfred Nancy and Tata Martino. That was the big debate. Which one of those two geniuses deserves Coach of the Year? And guess what? Both of those geniuses are sitting at home after the first round of the playoffs. And Rob Valentino, who is an interim coach, he is the interim coach of Atlanta, which, by the way, I would hire him right now. He should be hired as the coach. So,
well, there you have it. Anyway, well, I guess what's next for this show, we'll see. We'll see when we be back. But we thank everybody for watching throughout the season, watching Inside Inter Miami. Follow Michelle's work. Michelle's going to be all over any little thing that happens with this team over the next few weeks and a couple of months until the 2025 season comes around. And we may be back for maybe an episode here and there if there's something notable to talk about. But if not, until we do, thank you for watching. Remember to catch us on YouTube, MiamiHerald.com, for this and for everything that Michelle writes and does. And one last time for now, but you see Michelle with that. Until then, I'm Andre Fernandez for Michelle Kaufman. Thanks for watching Inside Inter Miami. We'll see you next time.